go. Three, four, two, one. It is time for another evening with Let's Talk Melrose. Good evening. I'm Tom Catalini.
I'm Jen LeClaire.
Where's your accent, Jen?
Oh, I'm Jenny O'Cleary.
Very good.
Well, sounds like you. I'm the Shamrock Hammer.
And I'm just Tom Shampoo.
Well, I think many people would disagree with that qualification. Just Tom Shampoo. You are the amazing Tom Shampoo who counts in both directions, up and down when it's ready to get ready for showtime. Yes, he counts in both directions. And I'll tell you, one thing I'm wondering about is who signed us up for the Trivia Bee, and do I have to do anything? Because I feel like I have an absence of knowledge.
Information.
in the area of general knowledge.
I think that's because I'm team captain this year, which is a mistake. But yes, we still need to pick our name, you guys. And
fans could weigh in.
Yes, fans. That's a great idea. I started a whole Google Doc on this subject, if you guys remember. So we need a team name for our Trivia Bee. I had just suggested the Bees G's. Like disco.
Yeah, Saturday night. It is Saturday night. Yeah. That's when the event is, Saturday night. Saturday Night Fever. We got the Saturday Night Fever.
We be gonna win this thing. I don't know. I forget. I'm gonna look up my. We had some good ideas. But yeah, give us some good names for our Trivia B team.
I think we need to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. The good people of Melrose, wherever they are in the world, can weigh in on that throughout the show. We are, of course, celebrating St. Patrick's Eve today. Last year we were on St. Patrick's Day, and we have been talking and thinking, like many others, about what the world was like a year ago and what it's like a year later. And I think we had some graphics, Tom, if you have them handy.
I do, yeah. But just to give people, so we have two graphics, week 1 and week 2. So here's week 1.
The last show in normal times, right?
Right. There it is.
That in the studio.
Oh, look at Steve wearing the shirt again.
Steve Pizzella loves that
Look
t-shirt.
how new it looks.
Look how young everybody looks.
This was a year. Look how happy everyone is. This is a year ago in March. And then
March 10th.
And March 10th. And this is March 17th, a week later. Last year, St. Patty's Day, and everyone's on screen now, Zoom and all that. So big changes.
And we did talk about coronavirus on the last show in the studio on March 10th. It was just breaking at the time, and we talked about Mayor Brodeur and Ruth Clay had released some information on that, and it was all just starting. And we are pleased to announce, of course, Mayor Brodeur will be joining the show shortly for an in-depth interview on
very excited about that.
Municipal finance topics. There's a couple of things going on. There's some free cash. Which is kind of par for the course, but a little bit, it seems heavy this year, which is, I don't know if that's good or bad, but there's some decisions to be made. And then the $1.9 trillion COVID relief package, American Recovery Act, whatever it's called, is heading our way like a fast moving train full of cash. And we have to figure out what to do.
But will it or will it not stop at Cedar Park?
Great. That's also a question for the mayor. So we're looking forward to speaking with the mayor. I have a quick note that I want to just jump in and say, if I may.
Yeah. Yes.
I got a nice, lovely certificate from the one and only Jen O'Cleary.
Yeah. The awards committee has been out.
The awards committee from the city of Melrose. My son turned 18 last week after the show. And that means both of my kids are now 18 or older. And so the award is great job raising kids into adulthood.
Yeah, you got a certificate of completion.
I completed my task.
Yes. So, or at least completion of phase 1, I would say. With having some kids that are a little bit older, I would say that's completion of phase 1.
Phase 2. Okay. Phase 1. So, but the whole point of bringing it up is, thank you. The whole point of bringing it up is because I wanted to just remind people, or at least acknowledge, that I wouldn't have wanted to raise them anywhere else besides right here in Melrose. I feel so glad that my kids were right here in Melrose. And so again, just love the city, love everything it stands for, and everything that it is, and glad to be a part of that. So.
And we're proud of you. We love you and support you. Although you almost took the show completely off the rails by being absent last Thursday when you went out for that family celebration of Eli's birthday.
That's right, Eli's birthday. So, all right, lots going on tonight. Lots going on.
Yeah, before we get into news, I wanna give a quick shout out to you. This past weekend, Hour 5. It's been a tough year for all kinds of student activities and stuff like that, but. The most resilient of our Melrose DI teams, Destination Imagination. There are 5 teams this year, and they had to present a video solution this year of their central challenge. It's called in DI terms, and so all the 5 teams submitted their solutions over the weekend. They'll be, it'll be all appraised and they'll be awarded and all that kind of stuff. It's a statewide Massachusetts statewide tournament. So congratulations. It's hard. It was hard work this year. It was tricky and they did great. So congrats.
Awesome.
Yeah, great. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's a great program. So I think it's time though to get into the news. First order of business, does anybody know a semi-reputable place where news could be reported? So Mike Karaji of The Patch has breaking news relative to Melrose, and we're all reading The Patch night and day around the clock every time.
Oh, no.
What is that? There it is.
Oh, no.
That's too bad. Permanently? You heard it here first.
It's breaking news on LCM.
We're sorry to hear that.
He's our roving reporter.
Yes.
Thank you, Mike Karaji.
Thanks for the scoop.
Mike Karaji.
We'll read the details in the patch.
Details will be in the patch. Thank you, Mike Karaji, who has been a co-host of the show in the past and a fan and a prior guest when we were in the studio and co-host when we've been here. And I wonder if it is we've got 2 CVS's and a Walgreens, and Green Street Pharmacy isn't going to make it, I guess. So that's sad news. Okay. You hate to see. There used to be another pharmacy on Main Street in Melrose. Now I can't remember the name of it. That was
like the apothecary. Right. Yes, 20. Right? Wasn't it 20 years ago?
All right, we're moving on because I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Paul will probably know. So once we
Paul will know. Paul will know. We'll talk to the mayor when he comes on.
Melrose, okay. He's Melrose Drug Center. Okay, wait, yeah, we need to see. We need to.
Thank you.
We need to get. Thank you. We need to get the people who know on this show. Let's go. Let's get into it.
All right, so we're into the news. We've got the breaking news about the pharmacy, and are we talking about fire pits again this week?
No.
I think we can skip over the.
They're just okay. Just
the fire department has. Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
I have a few things for elementary caregivers. I'll say really quickly because things are happening really fast at our school. So we want to just get the news out that tomorrow night is a Q&A with Dr. K, Jen McAndrew, and the mayor at 6 p.m. There's the WebEx link to talk about elementary any questions and answers you may have. But families will, this is all my air quotes, families will retain the choice as to whether to send their children in school in person or have them learn remotely through the end of the school year per DESI. So go join that WebEx to ask questions. And then also if you're an elementary parent, don't forget, if you don't already know, there's a survey, fill it out, and so that they can start planning for where the children will be going in the buildings and staffing. Okay, there it is there.
Wow, great. Thanks,
all right.
Hey,
that's a lot.
It's happening really fast. So
yeah, it's true.
That's all I got.
Thank you. Thank you.
A lot of things are happening fast, but what we want to do is talk to Mayor Brodeur, who's been on the show a number of times, and kind of focus this conversation about what we talked about at the top of the show, the free cash and the American Relief Act money coming. And we're going to try something a little bit different this week. We're going to, what are we putting them in the interview corner? What are we calling it?
Tom and Jen are being put in time. We're being put in time out.
We're being put in time out while the knowledgeable folks have an in-depth discussion on a couple of topics. So we're going to see how this works. And if somebody who knows how to work the mechanics can do that, I'll give you the walk-up
we can
music.
Do it ourselves. We can remove ourselves. You do walk-up music. I'll remove us both. We'll add Paul, and then we'll be back for the dancing.
Technology. There we go.
Hey,
Hey, all right.
Wait a minute. All right.
There it is. Oh, I have the worst lighting. It's not fair.
it's all right. You're wearing green. It matches.
He doesn't want to go.
On the fly.
Fantastic.
Your advanced people need work. I didn't know it was a St. Patty's Day thing.
Literally, no one else did either, clearly.
I'm wearing Irish black, I guess, is how that goes.
Oh, no, I showed up in a suit. I want that clear.
All right.
As did I.
Welcome, Paul.
Our dignitary. Hi.
Yeah, welcome.
It is good to be back. Yeah, Melrose Drug Center was where to the left of Camellas as you face it. Green Street might be the only, I think it's the only independent pharmacy left in Melrose.
Wow.
Yeah.
We will miss them. They delivered. Long
before
before delivery was a thing. They delivered.
Wow. Yeah. So we have a lot to cover, but I had a couple of things very quickly, if I may, Sam. I was talking to Sam earlier about this. Like, there's so many things going on in the city. We could do this show probably once a month, at least, if not more. But just because of what's happening these days, I want to give you a quick minute or two to just update people on a couple of things that are in the news. The vaccines are going well. I saw a news piece in the patch. 25% of the city, I think, has had at least one vaccination. So that seems like good news, I think, and hopefully it'll pick up speed. But just a quick thought on that. How are you feeling about that process?
Are we going one at a time, or you give me the list?
No, do one at a time.
Pick and choose.
We'll do one at a time very quickly.
The vaccine thing is nuts, and I am on a very small committee of kind of municipal officials that interact with Lieutenant Governor Polito and Secretary Sutters, and the candor has been great of late. There's been some bumps along the way, but because vaccine is coming in from a lot of different places into a lot of different channels, like the CVS is growing their capacity. That's totally controlled by the federal government, so it gets a little hard to translate down to for folks. Why aren't you doing X, Y, or Z? Why is this other place being able to do it? It is nuts, but we are getting to a point where I think 1 million people in Massachusetts, if the numbers I heard this morning from Secretary Sutters are correct, are fully vaccinated, and that's out of probably a population of 4 million vaccinatables, because we don't do right now 18 or younger. Or you can do Moderna. I'm not sure about J&J, but no one under 16 can currently get vaccinated. Right. So
okay, well, that's good to hear.
It's moving slow, but it's moving in the right direction. And again, folks, all praise to our local Board of Health and the gazillion volunteers that helped out in a bunch of different ways, from helping folks sign up to making sure the clinics run okay, to even nurses, physicians' assistants, those folks putting the shots into the arms. One of the reasons why the process is frustrating is it's been somewhat taken away from local cities and towns. Like, we're really good at this, and it's something that they've been practicing in various ways for 20 years. So let us get back to it. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is the shots in the arms. And so we'll continue to cheer that on, and we're ready to, when and if vaccine is made available to Melrose, we are ready to put it into arms 24 hours after we get the word.
Good. I want to move ahead to the money, because I do want to get to that money topic. So Sam, let's cover that. So as Tom Kedley mentioned, there's what's called free cash that's available to the city, and there's also now this the American Recovery Act, the money coming in from the federal government, $1.9 trillion, and I think Mass got $8.2 billion for local aid, and so Melrose gets $8 million, I guess, as an allocation.
Give or take.
So yeah, so let's take those one at a time, I guess. And so let's start with free cash. Like, that's what is it? Explain it to folks who don't know very quickly. But let's talk about the free cash and what it means for the city.
Because free cash isn't really free, right?
No, and very quickly, folks, you all know it's not my strong point. Lord knows, it's probably a 20-minute run-in that if this was not live and could be edited, would make for a lovely piece of television. But off we go. Right? So, free cash is kind of what's left over at the end of the fiscal year. Is probably the easiest way to think of it. DOR standard says you should probably try to shoot for somewhere between 3 and 5% of your annual revenue coming back to you in the form of free cash. And that is for a bunch of reasons. Budgets are predictions about what money you're going to have and what needs you're going to confront, right? And haven't seen it at the state level where it's much more complicated. Mass Health could spend $1 billion. They could spend 1.5, depending on a lot of different circumstances. Here in Melrose, we have that not as much. Employees might come on or off. Health insurance costs can go a little bit wacky. We can have, we will project out new growth, which is the extra tax money we get when someone, say, throws a deck on their house or whatever the case may be. Our car excise tax, if a bunch of people buy new cars, we do better on the excise tax front than maybe we would have predicted. This year's a little bit funky, and that is the reason why it is $5 million, which is a high kind of outlier for us, is what hit over the last year is a $1 million payment as a result of a lease the city entered into before my time with Waste Management around a parcel on Route 99. Now, that is terrific. It's really, but that represents payment for a 10-year obligation. And if we try to get out of that obligation, if we have a good reason, we might need to claw back some of that money. So it's probably not a great idea to just push that all out into the street. So we try to use that money for one-time costs, things that we know we're not going to see every year. And if you really want to be a hardcore municipal geek, I got to recommend this document to you. This is
how interesting.
This is, and it's available by link, not in the chat, but this is the FY 2020 Capital Improvement Program. And
so if I can
make a long story very short, if you're doing well, you budget your capital needs just like you do your operating needs so that you keep up over time. And this is really, and it was done in a very kind of efficient and professional way with a team of folks from both inside and one person outside of city government to list, prioritize, and assess all our needs. So this is kind of this is the shopping list of ongoing expenses.
So our garden producers will find that link in our show document, and if they want to put it in the chat or the comments, that'd be great. But we have the cheat sheet that we can talk through. But first, I wanted to say, like I with my personal finances, I'm an over budgeter, so I'm very thankful that Melrose too is an over budgeter, and so it's nice to see. Well, I guess it's nice to see, but we do have this money that is needed to be spent. And as you mentioned, capital projects, one-time expenses are more ideal than longer term engagements like employees and so on. So I do have your list. If you don't mind, we can talk through it. But if you
no, that's up to you. The important thing for folks to understand, free cash is not an anomaly. It is a recurring source that is really a representation of good management. And this is historically over time. I understand we have hovered around $4 million. Last year, we were very conservative in terms of pushing a lot of money into reserves in case COVID, in case we needed that money for interrupted revenue or unusual expenses, whatever the case may be. But there is a method to the madness, and there is a very well thought out plan for how to deal with ongoing capital expenses in the city. Sometimes you got to vary it a little bit, but this is the Bible.
So yeah, I'll just put up the graphic. I just took a screenshot earlier, and some of these things are already kind of in the works. Is that or okay?
They either are or they're certainly planned for, but things that are like pretty. The salt shed is in process. One of the middle school security lines is done. The frontline fire apparatus is done. The scuba is done. The floor is done. The city hall generator is at the top of the list for this year, as we've seen. Really, we haven't had a failure, but we've seen really in spades how important it is for that kind of infrastructure to be able to survive a lot of curveballs, including maybe having to run the city without city hall. So that is what I suspect will be I hope will be the number one priority for free cash in this round.
So just for folks, so if I remember correctly, the document that you showed us is the plan that the committee put together. And I think it outlined 66 total projects, but those 14 are like the priorities that Melrose has right now.
Yeah.
So it sounds like half of them are at least started or being started, which is really great to see. But again, the $5 million, what's called free cash, is not really free, but it's also not unusual for Melrose. We have money every single year, it sounds like, from the budgeting process. And that's good. That's good for us. I guess it keeps us healthy in the sense that we can look at capital improvements. And again, capital improvements, I think, they're over $25,000. They last 5 years or more, and it's a non-recurring expense. Is that right? Is that right? I know, I was reading the documents.
Oh my God!
Prepping for the big mayor to come on and talk.
If the hardest of the hardcore take a look at this list, they will see it's incredibly thoughtful. A lot of energy and attention went into it, but they're going to look at this and they're not going to go for probably 90% of what's on here. Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah. No one is saying, I can't wait for the Hoover roof to be repaired because that is going to make for some really awesome stuff happening in the city.
Yeah.
So
but that's the stuff you got to do.
So without having read through the whole thing, I'm just curious. I read the cheat sheet, but are there other things in there, or even since that was done in 2020? I don't know what year it is now. But are there things that departments need today that they didn't need last year when this document was produced? Or are there one-time expenses or improvements that, and they're like each wish list, like from parks or recreation? Yeah. Okay.
No, it's a terrific question because this process started, I think, in June of 19 or fiscal, so it runs on fiscal years, which are a little bit funky. And there's always going to be things that come up on an emergency basis that are ideally, you got to find some way to pay for them. I want to say the library elevator died a while ago. That has to get up and running immediately for ADA issues and for good customer service. That was around a $50,000 expense. It's just got to happen. Luckily, we got a bucket to pay for it out of. So there's things like that.
So how do we, as lay regular people, how are we going to see, or are the departments going to present kind of their wish list of like technology improvements, or I'm in the tech side. Indeed. So software things, or again, what the rec department needs, or are we going to know what those are? Do we get to hear?
Well, it's kind of a two-part process. Every department, the CIP thing was done by every department stepping up and identifying their needs and then the group prioritized. Some of them aren't so remarkable. Some of them are very big ticket. And then there's other chances for input along the way. And there are some things that come up that are totally outside kind of capital. Our commitment to free cash for DEI work. You're not going to find that, you're not going to find that in a CIP. It's probably not something that would have come up in a department wish list, except maybe for mine, and off you go from there. The process in some respects is constant, but I'll use this as an example. The senior center needs HVAC work. it wasn't, quite frankly, on the radar when this plan was built. The need has arisen. I'm not sure it is a dire need, meaning we can't open without it, but you want to be flexible enough to recognize, all right, we got an interesting set of circumstances here where there's a couple of things going on that maybe have we made some progress on since this was written. Air quality in public buildings makes a huge difference, and we weren't really thinking about that so much 2 years ago. And we also recognize with some of the resiliency work we've done and our net zero efforts that one thing Melrose doesn't have, particularly because all our buildings for the most part are old, is a cooling center. So, we have very good data that says our summers are going to get very, very hot. And how do we help people? Well, one way we can help people is we have state-of-the-art HVAC in our senior center. And I'll make a gentle plug for perhaps a new civic space like a library that would be able to, serve not just the obvious need, but a little bit of a bigger picture. You're going to check a lot of boxes.
I mean, as you can imagine, people are excited to. So with the free cash opportunity that happens pretty much every year, as you mentioned, it's good to like catch up on the new roof that we need in our homes, or to update our water tanks and the things that we have to do when we try to budget ourselves. But this extra $8 or so million from the federal government provides an interesting opportunity for Melrose to really kind of propel into the future. And I think that's why people are really excited to hear, obviously it's happening in real time, but to hear what you're thinking. It's like,
it's not as exciting as Medford's $40 million or Newton's like buckets of cash.
I don't know what you're talking about. But no, it's good
news.
It is very good news.
It's 10% of our budget, right? So that's fantastic.
And I'll get on my political horse for a second. Elections matter, and we've got an American Rescue Plan that is desperately needed, not just for the city, but for individuals throughout Massachusetts and throughout the United States. And folks are going to get help that they need and deserve, and happily that includes cities and towns. So I'm not. Everyone wants more, but I am not complaining about the fact that we're getting $8 million for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What are we going to do? Right. That's the question. The first thing we got to do is find out exactly what we can spend it on. Meaning, are there any strings attached? One thing we learned there was kind of an evolution of what you could do with CARES Act money and FEMA reimbursements, where you had to spend it by a certain time, you had to spend it on this, and then you could hold on to it longer, and then the FEMA reimbursements were bigger, so maybe you want to shift stuff around the way you were paying for it. It is not 100% clear yet, and I think it will be fairly shortly, what the realm of the possible is. Meaning, between the CIP and the master plan and some of the small scale things that we've done over the last year that really worked. I think of some of the public art stuff. It was really kind of a down payment on some very, very interesting, creative things that help the creative arts economy, help generate business downtown, a ton of good things. Are those things that we can do with the money? Because obviously it's stimulus money. The idea, I assume, is get it out there, get it out on the street quick, and tie it to COVID.
Right. So I wonder if there's some opportunity for some of the small business assistance that maybe could have saved Green Street or other businesses that have Hourglass. We missed you already. Or again, ways to help kind of get the funds down to the people. I did see here, not to pivot for a moment, but I also saw today that you announced the participatory budgeting project, which is really, I love that stuff.
Sure.
So $5,000 is designated for mostly for Melrose High School students to come up with something they want to spend the money on around town.
We
I
bumped
assume
it to $8,005,000.
Let's
make it easy.
Excellent. So what are you hoping to get out of that, or what do you think they're going to come back with? Not to have any leading things.
Well, I can't be clear about that. I don't care. And obviously, it has to be possible and legal. But as we started the process, quite frankly, I think the students that were getting involved had a hard time believing that or kind of internalizing it, and so they had a kind of a very narrow view of what can we really do. And so, to a certain degree, we've rejiggered the process a little bit to try to make it a little bit more interactive and kind of try to draw it out. From something like, it doesn't have to be in the schools. It doesn't have to be COVID related. I mean, it does. Again, there's a couple ideas or principles that we'd like to see. It'd be great if it had a lasting impact. It would be, or if it could be seed money for a bigger play about something else. That's terrific. But it really is the deal with participatory budgeting, particularly at this scale, is if it's going to work as intended, you really got to let them own it.
Yeah.
You really, really got to let them do it, and we will.
If they all come back asking for a beer garden, it did not come from us, or because that would be very inappropriate.
That is correct. Correct. There will be no.
So one of the reasons I was
cafe, bookstore, organic tea, Melrose High School shop. I suspect. Unless they can figure out how to do it, in which case, let's go.
One of the things that I liked about this conversation tonight was because there's the intersection of both of these happening around the same time, the information coming out. And I feel like in some ways, so the $5 million, the free cash is tied to the budget, and that has to be spent this year. Is that correct? As a part
more
of
or less.
This,
it's a little bit more complicated than that, but yeah.
Yeah. And so for me, I felt like this is great because we have money for capital improvement project. We have a list of 14 priorities, and now we can look at those and maybe make those happen. And then the other piece, the $8 million from the federal government, what are the specifics for that? Like, is that a one-time check that Uncle Sam writes to Melrose, or is that like over 4 years or 5 years? Like, how does that money come in? And
right now it's going to sound contradicting. It's a one-time allocation that we're going to get in 2 chunks.
Okay.
So it'll be $8 million over, I think it's going to be a couple of years.
Yeah.
But definitely one-time money.
Okay.
Yeah. And we are assuming that there's also going to be some dedicated education buckets of money separate and apart from the $8 million. And one thing that makes it a little bit tricky in certain respects is if there is an infrastructure bill coming, which looks like there is, do we have to start thinking about, kind of the shell game again? If we decide, all right, with $5 million, we can stand up some really great transportation initiatives, and then 6 months down the road, find out that there's actually going to be new federal dollars for that. We have to make sure we're flexible enough to pivot away so that we can maximize all the different buckets of money that we might be able to tap in the next little while.
Wow. So is there going to be a process for the public to participate in the not decisions, but in the comment aspects of what we think might be the most beneficial ways to help Melrose move forward? Because I feel like the $8 million is such a great opportunity for the city to do things it never would have imagined before, right? So the capital improvements, you have to make them, but this is like almost like found money in some ways, or money that we can use to do things that we never imagined we'd be able to do. So as the mayor of the city, what are the things yes, exactly. What are the things that most excite you about this opportunity? And again, how do we allow for the public to weigh in at some point in the process?
I'd say, things that kind of, it sounds almost like strategic value investments. So things like investments in public art, wayfinding, those kind of things that can really, over time, set the table for more investments, more growth, the opportunity to maintain, to grow and maintain.
Right.
That's going to be a big focus, and we're hoping we can be that there aren't that many strings attached. We have to, what we all dread is, 5 years down the road, there's a federal audit, and they say, that $8 million we gave you, $5 million of it was spent outside the bounds of what we thought was good taste. Give it all back. Now, I'm not super worried about that, but I'm more than not worried about it at all. That's for sure. But the opportunities really are endless. Can we do that kind of downtown development and do it in really kind of game-changing ways? Can you kind of push all our values into that framing? Meaning, what can we do downtown that helps business, that is a transportation initiative, that also gets us towards our net zero goals? If we can find those kind of things,
so as you know,
awesome.
As you know, this wonderful city has lots of opinions and is very civically active. So
$8 million, $10 million opinions. That's
yes. Right. Are you envisioning ways to engage? How are you going to engage the community? And
well, first thing we're going to do is find out
what it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely find out the range of what can do, what we can do. And then we'll rip the cover off it and see what people want to do. And obviously, and stuff it into there are some boring needs that people don't tend to typically respond to. And it will be very hard to continue to remind people that this money is one-time investment type money, and it is not a good practice to monetize ongoing expenses if you don't know how you're going to meet them. Now, that doesn't mean you can't get super creative. Like, all right, could we pay off debt and turn that into a revenue stream that?
Yes, that's a great. That was very sexy way to spend this money. I love that. That was good. yes, I know debt. We have debt.
Can we buy GameStop stock? And
that's right.
Roblox,
sending it all to Everett. We're putting it all on black and hoping for the best.
There we go.
Well, as your second favorite news outlet in Melrose, probably the Patch is the first. We are happy to help be your conduit to the community. If you need any, that's what they say. If you need any way to pull opinions in or push information out, we are happy to do that.
Yes, of course.
Well, then let me take a moment to plug our outdoor performance space survey that just hit the street today. And
look who's there.
And Jenny O'Cleary
magic of technology.
can fill in a little bit more.
No, actually, I don't know.
They can't hold us back anymore. So listen, I clicked on the link for your survey, and what's interesting to me, I love the idea, and you have a map of all the parks and places that we could have venues, which is awesome. But I clicked on the survey, and it's really for people who want to put on an event, right? And what their requirements would be. It's not for people that want to go to events. So I'm hoping that this word gets out to the Porch Fest people and other people who do things in town. That want to put that on. That's correct, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Block parties, dad bands, we got it.
I would add to that, though, that part of the impetus for this, and the mayor can attest to this, is that organizations who already have programming plans and are only lacking the space and venue started approaching the city and also the Cultural Council. We know who our 2021 grantees are. We've said, yes, you can have some money. They've got a plan. They've got presenters and performers. They've got the staff. They just don't have a space. And so part of this was for folks who are ready, but for space. So the ideas are also great, but that's sort of where it started.
Right.
I'll tell the council, the Cultural Council, I had the chance to drop in on one of the meetings last night, and they are totally on top. And Tom, to your point, like it's almost, we talked about this a little bit last night, the chicken or the egg problem. Do you approach the artist first and see what they're looking for, or do you try to identify venues and then go out and look for artists?
The artists just want to perform, man. So you're looking for the organizers who are going to pull, like the Sam Hammers of the community, who are going to pull things together and make stuff happen. Yes.
It's all about, Russell Park open air performance for me. So
there you go.
The block party comes, there's another $8 million possibility. Right there.
Oh my God. Music to my ears.
A little bit of lighting.
We do have a question coming in from our own Jess Dugan, speaking of Russell Park, about whether or not the average person who's not looking for a venue to perform, but as a spectator, if there'll be a survey opportunity to weigh in for that. So I just wanted to pop that up there. Whoop.
Sure, we can do that. And Melrose Cultural Council does a survey every year.
And there you go. Wow. Paul, I know that there was another thing from last week that I wanted to just touch on real quick that's not related to the two money conversation pieces we had. There was a meeting last week, a public forum, I believe, last week that you had with MBTA for the cuts. Was that
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah. So you want to speak for a minute on that too, since we have you, just quickly how that went, what that looked like, and
it went fine. It wasn't particularly well attended. I'll be candid about, but it is recorded so that folks can take a look at it if they want. It was mostly, the MBTA just taking us through their what they call, I think, surge forward, something forward, and it really is, here are our cuts. I mean, everyone's got a marketing angle on this kind of stuff. It's mostly to educate folks about what the service cuts look like. We've headed off certainly the worst of them, but they're still out there. And probably the biggest benefit to that is they've talked about building back up and restoring service as need be. And the important question for me and for the community for services that may be totally shut off, like some of the late night service or the elimination of one of the bus lines, is once it's totally eliminated, how do you assess the need for it? How do you know when it's time to bring it back if those people are all gone, essentially? Maybe have changed transportation modes. How do you reach them? Right. And they were honest that we really don't have a good answer for that. We need to think about it. But continuing to pay attention to the T and really other ways to be innovative about transportation and look at, there's an extraordinary amount of money coming from the feds for transportation initiatives, particularly public transit.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so like, it's frustrating to hear that conversation, because if you look at the American Rescue Plan, there's $30 billion coming at the same time. So understanding they need to plan, they can't count on this money, but now it is the law and it is coming. So it's disappointing, to figure out how that gets sussed out. And I think, I've gone to some of those meetings and people feel like, it's an opportunity for them to make cuts that they've always wanted to make or reduce things. And it really screws things up in Melrose, in particular, when you start cutting out bus routes or, take away train stations.
And that was certainly that does, all our planning, not all of it, but, we're big believers in a zoned and pursued policy around transit-oriented development. And when that is threatened by a commuter rail cut, it's not just, oh, geez, I have to figure out a new way to get to Boston. It's also, well, maybe we won't build that development, or we'll make it a different kind of infrastructure that doesn't really line up with our goals, but the market's kind of gone out the window. They've messed it up by not letting us be able to count on that kind of infrastructure. And that's no good. Everything in this community, from a transportation perspective, centers around public transportation and T access.
Right. It's critical. And let's be clear too. Some people are just trying to get to Shaw's. Not everybody's going into Boston. Right. When you start talking about bus routes, you're just trying to get around town.
Yeah. Right.
Mm-hmm. And that is like, that is a place when we talk about $8 million and what maybe you can do for innovation. there are some, to my mind, there are some very interesting ideas that have been tried in a couple other places. I'll point to Salem's and this thing called the Salem Clipper as an example that are, Salem's a very different place than Melrose, but it's essentially, I'll describe it as inter-Salem Uber. And what is really cool about that is it does make inner city connectivity, which could help. It certainly would help seniors get around much more effectively. I think of how do we help our Metco students that really struggle with some after-school participation, particularly at the middle school and high school level, because it's the early bus or the late bus, and those are your two choices.
Right.
Well, if we had something like this that could easily get those kids to Oak Grove, then that opens up a whole world of possibility without us stressing about, the economics of buses really are awful. They really
I think how about petty cabs, and everybody on the ped bike committee has to volunteer to bike us around everywhere.
Yes,
that works too.
Put it down. Oh my goodness.
Oh, well, let's be realistic. We're gonna have to use sleds in the winter.
That's true.
Yeah.
But you
mentioned a fitness program too. See, it all works.
You mentioned students, and I was riveted by the interview, of course, but also trying to follow the comments. And some of our viewers were talking about kind of the education, the learning gap. Everybody's concerned about the impact of the pandemic on this. And I did happen to trying to read some articles about the rescue plan, and it seems like there are some things in there. There's like money directed at that for summer programs or other things. So I don't know if you know any more about that, but people were asking some of those questions.
So in terms of the specifics, I'm not the guy you want building the nuts and bolts of that plan for sure. I mean, that's gonna sit with the school department.
Sure, but is it clear to you that money is coming, and do you have a sense of the $8 million? Is some of that slotted for that, or just how it plays out?
No, my understanding as we sit here today is there are separate piles of money for educational programming related to COVID. So we have a couple of things going on. There is kind of learning loss, which is probably something that in some way, shape, or form, most, if not all of our students are dealing with in some way. And then there are compensatory services, which are essentially services that we are obligated to deliver and have really struggled to. If you need occupational therapy in a closed system and you might not have the ability to get someone to deliver those in home, and you can't do it at the school either. How do we deal with it on the fly? More importantly, how do we get those kids back up to where they should be, but for the pandemic? So two different sides, two different parts of the same problem that I've certainly talked a lot about with the superintendent and with a couple of the school committee members about that specific need, the building of it, again, two different parts, and a little bit challenging. Some families intend to go away over the summer, but might need those services. Are we talking about in a building plan? Is there some other way to do it? Do we need to make it, offer a variety of options? Yeah, I'm not sure, but I think
I think there's a range of questions, and you make an excellent point that the sort of how to actually deploy that, you need experts, right, in the field to do that. But I think people are curious. That money is allocated, how much it is, and those kinds of things. So will this additional $8 million flow through mechanically, like through the city council, where people, so like the free cash you guys were talking about, like you send a written notice to the city council with your recommendation, they debate it, people can log into the Zoom, they go to MMTV and watch that. So it's pretty available to people that are interested. Yeah. Does this $8 million sort of flow that way? Because people are commenting with all kinds of questions and ideas, and I think they'd like to understand and maybe potentially weigh in. So is it the city council the next stop, or?
No, I don't think so. Okay. I suspect this is more like the CARES Act money in that it's direct. Well, it depends on kind of it's regulated by FEMA and MEMA, and we always check with our auditors to make sure that we are not going far afield of what the intended use of the dollars is. But it looks like it's direct from state to executive to do with it, to spend it. So meaning in a town, the select board would have the authority, presumably.
Yeah.
In cities, in a city like Melrose, it would be the mayor's office.
So how do you invite people into that? Like the city council kind of has a structure for, making that visible to people. This is, I just assume that they would allocate it like they do the normal budget process. But so, like, I don't know, how do people tune in, or do we just have you back once a week for a while to coach us?
We'll let you know in advance the costume changes.
That's right, perhaps.
Right.
Perhaps. I mean, what we did with the CARES Act money is essentially convened a working group to try to figure out, again, everyone had priorities, and what do you identify as your needs, and what are we going to do? And so the vast majority of that money went to support the schools in ways that I suppose aren't that particularly interesting, in terms of things like cleaning service, some of the services, some of the soft supplies like plexiglass, PPE, HR costs, like, overtime for both for DPW staff plus outside vendors that did kind of the super cleaning or the more aggressive cleaning, some police and fire overtime. And we certainly reported that out to the city council on kind of the city side. There were also buckets of education spending that we told that was really school department ability to spend, but the superintendent Leah Secor, their finance person, certainly kept us up to date on what the needs are. And then there needed to be some coordination between city side and school side to make sure we weren't doing anything duplicative or counterproductive.
Right. So that's a pretty complex, nuanced process. It sounds like there's a lot of moving parts to this.
It's pretty nuts. Pretty nuts. I mean, again, it's a good problem to have.
Man.
Absolutely.
And, sometimes it's like with some of the school spending, it had to be nimble. We knew we had to clean schools. We knew what it took, when we knew, what our capacity was, what kind of the vendor marketplace looked like, and jumped on that.
So you mentioned advisory boards, and I read in an article in the Patch today that, maybe you can verify this is true, that Mayor Paul Brodeur's advisory committee on enhanced liquor sales in the Mount Hood article. So is that a real thing? And how do we
all get it?
Why are we not on this advisory board?
I don't want that board.
I am not sure that this group, or what I suspect your audience demographic represents a full and fair cross-section of the opinions of what alcohol consumption commercially should look like in the city.
Fair point.
Okay.
That's a fair point.
That having been said, yeah, we did put together, we did put together a group, I'd hesitate to say one, maybe 6 months ago or so, really to give me some ideas about kind of the current state of some of those regulations, what we need to do to, if anything, to change the rules to make things a little bit more potentially attractive for folks that might want to do business downtown in ways that changing those rules might generate some more interest and some more foot traffic and all those things.
Yeah, and what I liked in this article was about, should we allow beer and wine sales on the course on Mount Hood? And the comment from the advisory group, I don't know if it was you or the advisory group, was like, look, let's think bigger than that, because it's what happens in Melrose is we debate, should we allow NIMS or this or that, and we're kind of losing the big picture. So I thought that was encouraging, but I didn't know that advisory board was real, and that's the way you sort of get input to make a lot of these decisions.
Right.
And so that makes it sound a little bit too top down, if you will. That is really, in some respects, the starting point. And by that I mean, if there, depending on what changes we decide to make, like the beverage cart at Mount Hood, to your point, is part of a bigger discussion. But what that implicates is an ordinance that says you can't have any alcohol consumption on any parkland in Melrose, meaning it would be illegal under the ordinance for the folks who run the course to do that, no matter what the Liquor Commission says. The Liquor Commission can't flip can't flip an ordinance. Only the city council can. But say something like the expanded footprint for outdoor dining, that is state law / Liquor Commission. So the Liquor Commission can consider that without any kind of a change in our current operation. And other stuff, like say we do make that change to the ordinance, the Liquor Commission and the state ABCC would still both have to approve the beverage count at Mount Hood. So
this is the boring but important stuff that I think people don't understand. And but it takes time. What'd you say?
No offense, Mr. Mayor. but it's true.
He was
I think Tom's point is like the questions aren't so.
Sure,
so
you
easy,
make my point, Jen.
Let me explain for you.
Where's that remove button? There's we all have our wish lists of things that we want to do, and they are possible. And so as long as our leadership kind of comes at it with that attitude and that frame of mind, like let's figure out how we remove the barriers or make changes where we need to. But it's not always like real simple. So I get that.
And there's not unanimity of agreement about things like that. The evolution of commercial access to alcohol. How's that for a boring turn of the phrase? As someone who's been here for 54 years, has been cripplingly slow from my perspective. There, you will also find people that say probably we're going to hell in a handbasket because the demon rum has, come along and injected itself into Melrose in some way. And so, I would say this, but for, the first couple restaurants being licensed and that going okay, and then, we see beer and wine as arguably an ancillary product to a different kind of retail enterprise. We didn't do those and have them go well. We wouldn't be in a position where we'd be seriously talking about these other changes. So it's a bit of an evolution.
But I had highlighted that comment that Brett made. Decisions are made by those who show up, and the boring but important stuff. I was just going to encourage people to participate in the process, because everybody goes to the city council meeting or calls your office at the 11th hour when things are already done and they're just finding out about it. But you really need to engage along the way, and the folks that show up and pay attention throughout that and go to some of these meetings you're talking about, maybe not all of them, but it is important, I think, to understand that it takes time. And even on this show tonight, we're talking about 5 million and 8 million. There's a process for handling this, and you've got to slow down and kind of pay attention to some of it and figure out how to engage. And I think people are looking to you as the leader of the city to communicate and help us make that easy, I guess, for people. And the city council is governed by rules to make that accessible. So all that to say, the boring but important stuff. It is important.
It is.
And we just very much appreciate you coming on to the show and being interviewed twice, because so far our new format has been a complete failure. But it has yielded, I think, and I've been watching the clock here. I think this is the longest running show in LTN.
It is the longest show.
A special 1 hour with the mayor.
Let's keep going.
We should have sold advertising on this one.
I just want to just to wrap up one more point for me, because I think it's important. There we go. The $8 million that's coming in from the federal government, to me, feels like the once in a lifetime opportunity to elevate the community to a level that we never thought we would be able to do, right? So every year we have to live by a budget, and then some years we have extra money, and that's great. But this other money coming in, to me, is the first opportunity, maybe the only opportunity we'll have in our time living here as parents and residents, to really help Melrose become the community we always know that it could be and should be. So that's my hope, is that we use it for that.
I disagree with what you said just a little bit, and that is that it's more like the opportunity to hit the accelerator to a certain degree.
Better way to put it. Yeah.
Like, you look at a master plan and you set out these goals, and you reach them in fits and starts, and you get curveballs along the way, like a COVID or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And you have to adjust that vision. But, to the extent we can, have this opportunity and really frame it as, what do we want the community to be, almost instead of what box can we check off, is a big deal. And I'll go back to that, my Salem Clipper example. That is something that arguably, again, there's value there for students, there's value there for seniors, there's value there for our merchants, for folks that might be, they might have an ambulatory job. It's good news. It's good news for the environment if it's gonna, suppress traffic. Maybe folks think about leaving their car behind a little bit long. That is, that's good for a whole ton of people, and it's good for folks over the long term. Those are the kinds of things that I'm really interested in doing. Certainly not the only thing we can do. I'm not sure if we can pull off that particular thing, but
it's just a good example of the thinking,
right.
Though. I like it as an example.
But I do like your. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Tom.
I was going to say, I do like your accelerator example. That seems to be a better fit. I like that.
Yeah.
So it's a good problem to have, and hopefully we can fit $16 million worth of ideas into.
Well, that's the thing. You look at the when we showed the capital thing earlier, it makes you realize how quick 8 mil will go. I mean, it's a nice chunk of money for Melrose, but it's going to go in a hot second. So
you have to be quick but deliberative, right?
Yeah.
Say, we'll do, I've always wanted a bronze statue of me in the middle of.
Oh well, we make all kinds of statues and awards around here.
That is a good investment.
We can get that done on the cheap.
We got a warehouse. We also have a warehouse full of bronze. That's where we invested in the pandemic.
Right.
We went right to bronze last March because we figured everybody's going to go gold, and then they're going to go silver, and by the time they get to bronze, we'll have cornered the market.
Platinum's too pricey. I understand.
Yes. Hey, listen, I got more breaking news on this show. I got a text from my wife that says Baker says state will release plan to vaccinate remaining groups Wednesday morning. I think that might mean tomorrow morning. That might be.
Let me pump the brakes on that for you.
Okay, really?
In the know.
That is true, but let's just keep in mind that opening up a new category has not always been linked very closely to availability of vaccine.
Right.
So it will open things up, and it will hopefully accelerate the overall numbers. But one thing that we haven't talked about, and when I say we, I don't mean just you guys. I mean any of us. Is one thing that.
Well, no, it's all of Melrose now. Everyone is listening.
One thing that we have focused on and not really talked about is getting vaccines to folks that literally can't get to it.
Right.
Technically, the homebound.
We've
and
talked
that
about it.
that is super important, very challenging, and it's folks that can't navigate the system. So
I read an article. There's a pharmacist in Brooklyn that apparently went and did this, right? And so he noticed the appointments dropping. He had more supply, and he didn't want to evaporate as an outlet. And so he actually went to the senior centers and did that, and that increased the adoption rate tremendously. Do we have the opportunity to do anything like that for those people? And then also in the comments, people are of course asking about teachers, if there's any angle on. I know that there was a clinic last week at Memorial Hall, and somebody put a blast out to get the teachers, and they had 50 extra shots. Was that you?
Yes.
Yes. So people appreciated that, and we got some of that done. But as you navigate this, and now if there's more people eligible and there's still a limited supply, are there, I don't know, the tools in your tool belt on this anymore? They seem to keep changing them. So I don't know, like, how do we get them to people who, like you said, who can't get out, or to teachers more easily, or anything like that?
That's a whole show. That really is, because it is super complicated. The state really has changed the rules on several occasions. I will say regarding the teachers, it's as simple as this from the city's perspective. If we are given vaccine, we can turn around a clinic in 24 hours. So there's no question about that. In terms of the homebound, it's a lot harder because you can't do a clinic by its very nature. So, a good day, if you get 30 shots in the arms with the homebound, that's really a good day, because you are going to them. You do have to, you have to wait the 15 minutes to make sure they're okay. You can't jump off to another apartment. And basically, we check with our partners. We talk to folks like Mystic Valley Elder Services. We check with seniors. We check with the housing authorities, and make sure we can get at those folks. We are always worried that if someone isn't involved with a program or have that kind of access, that we might not reach them. Unfortunately, there's also some regulatory language around that. You have to be homebound in the way that state defines homebound in order for us to be able to put the needle in your arm. Otherwise, we put our own supply in jeopardy. Not that there is a big supply coming to cities and towns at this point.
We won't tell anyone. You have the LTMN permission to use your judgment and cut a couple of corners as appropriate. Whereas
none of that.
We hereby declare, we're members of the Chamber of Commerce. I don't know if you knew that. So whatever that's worth, we further empower you.
Throw our weight.
That is worth a lot, but not in this particular context.
Who do we have to call?
Meanwhile, we're just about holding the mayor hostage at this point. So we should probably let him go.
We should. But thank you so much for entertaining it and sticking around and being interviewed twice and letting us go on to multiple topics. But really the comments are off the hook. People really appreciate it. They love hearing from you. Thanks for letting us average Melrosians, represent some of the others out there. Maybe not perfectly, as you pointed out before, but the show is really all about just trying to get a conversation of Melrosians talking to Melrosians. And this is the stuff that's kind of hard to parse out, from watching meeting minutes, and you do an excellent job with the updates. So anybody who's not getting the mayor's updates that are, I think, still almost daily, if not daily, on the coronavirus and the Brodeur Bulletin, soon to be rebranded, I think.
We're working on a theme song for you.
Some of my best people are on that.
Despite your efforts, which are excellent, I think, in many ways in that area, and all the stuff that is available to the public by default just through the protocols, I think coming on and joining us, and we are sorry that it took, and we kept you long, but we appreciate it. And I think people appreciate it because it's just hard, and especially now in the pandemic, because if people would see you around town, you would stop and chat it up with them. And it's just not happening right now.
Right.
And also in some respects, it's a little bit, scary to put out any kind of public information because you do get concerned that it's going to change. We'll say, oh, there shall be, we had an experience with one of the clinics that we ran where the mantra is you're guaranteed second doses, which you kind of have to be, or the whole thing kind of goes away. And, we did shots to 400 people, overwhelming majority of it 75 and older. And when it was time to do the second clinic, we were told, and we've got your 700 doses ready to roll. So what do we do about that? And here's what the state doesn't do. And like I said, it's getting a lot better, but the state doesn't tell you how to call up 700 or 800 people that you promised to have a vaccine and say, maybe come back in 4 days and we'll see what happens. And you got to do that pretty early. And then the day before D-Day, they go, oh, we found you some doses so those people can all come. Again, it's a process, right? And we're I guess the cities and towns are really, really good at it. And we hope to have, as more vaccine comes online, we hope to have a much bigger role than the state currently kind of contemplates us having. And to the extent folks have additional questions about teachers and vaccine, I'm going to try to, depending on how the questions go at tomorrow night's forum, to speak to that a little bit. Hopefully we'll be a little bit more articulate than I've been tonight on that particular subject, because there is some good stuff going on, and I'm sure there is some frustration around, we know this need is out there. Why aren't we just doing it? And there are answers.
Great.
Yeah. Yes. And we talked last week. That was kind of what our show was about last week. And, I think we talked about timing as well, that we're putting unvaccinated teachers in front of unvaccinated children, and within weeks of them being allowed to get, or a week. So I think we would love to hear, we would love to hear more about.
You know what? Maybe we have to do Good Morning Melrose in addition to LTMM. We keep LTMM Tuesday nights, and every morning we get up and we
should call it the morning after, and it should be Wednesday morning.
Wednesday morning.
That could go a lot of different directions.
Why did I say that out loud?
I can't commit to that.
Put it on the T-shirt. It's going on the next round of T-shirts.
Happy Hump Day.
What would be a neat guest for you guys, since we're talking a little bit about communications and stuff, is my newest staffer, Brianna Garcia.
Yeah.
I don't suggest an hour and a half.
We've asked her. She must be watching every episode. We asked her as soon as she got hired. But yes, we would love to meet her. She seems phenomenal, and I appreciate her graphic bump. So
there you go.
The important thing.
Why does this I keep hiding and it keeps popping back up?
Because someone else is popping it.
It was off the rails when Tom and I were backstage. That's why we had to come. That's why we had to come back.
Yes.
Let me out. Let me out of jail.
Let's go behind the scenes and let's talk Melrose.
It's not. It's very stressful back there
in a virtual environment.
It's very There's a lot of buttons and all those great things that you see come on this stage. It looks like mission control when you're back there. It's very intimidating.
Maybe just to wrap, as you know, Mr. Mayor, with great power comes great responsibility. And Jen and I were given too much power.
We were given the keys.
That's right. Yeah. So we're
Are you the sole controller of the sound effect, Tom?
He is.
Yes, he is.
You had to ask. So he also controls the music.
I did
start playing.
Yes, we should. I did. Yes, it doesn't. None of it works from the back room. All right, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone who hung in watching it. Don't forget to download the audio podcast. Listen to this again and again, and we'll see you around town.
Thank you so much.